presentation. I am Josh Hager. I am the head of government records description at the State Archives of North Carolina, and I am the co-chair for the working group for this COSA Electronic Records Day. And I am so excited to welcome you to our program today. I would like to thank the other members of the Electronic Records Day Working Group, fellow co-chair Tara Maharjan from New Jersey, Josh Hackle from Illinois, and Krista Sorensen from Wisconsin. Thank you all for helping to put this program together. And this year's theme is digital storytelling. COSA's year-long theme has been looking at storytelling in the state and territorial archives across the country in various ways. So this year, Electronic Records Day is pivoting away from strictly born digital records to look at how we're telling our story in digital settings. So we are excited to welcome a fantastic panel today. We do have some past webinars from Electronic Records Day that are available on our YouTube channel. COSA also operates under a resource center on our website that is a lot of tools and resources that you can use for various archival needs. Josh Hackle, who you'll hear from in just a second, is the chair of the working group that maintains the resource center. And if you have resources that you think other archivists would like to use, please send them our way. We would like to acknowledge the sponsor for the State Electronic Records Institute for 2025, Preservica. We thank them for their support in making programs like this possible. I will turn it over to my colleague Josh Hackle for the annual poster reveal.
Okay, I'll get that sharing once the screen's down. Let's see. Is it showing now, Josh?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. So our poster this year is about digital storytelling, the mediums and methods of digital storytelling, going on the analogy of, unobserved tree falls, doesn't make a noise. So if a record is preserved but not discoverable, doesn't actually exist. So your finding aid might be suffice to showcase your collections to researchers, but storytelling through exhibits could be a good tool in broadening your reach to a wider public. So we try to look at what our presenters today are using at their agencies and to create a list of some other methods and means of storytelling using digital methods. So one we looked at first with digital preservation systems. A lot of us have a place where we can store our records, a digital preservation system, much like Preservica or LibNova or other places. So we already have our collections in there. So we have the existing infrastructure can help us collect the records, and then if there's a public access side, maybe curate them a little more in a special way to show them off to the public. There are also specific exhibit sites type systems like AM Cortex, which one of our presenters will go over. Having a dedicated site could be a lot more open to how you make your collection in a digital method, make it it's more flexible, more customizable than a strict digital preservation system. And then kind of more loose is the social media. It's a very bigger audiences. It's almost everyone a lot of people have it. It's get broad audiences. You can tailor your content by platform. It's very low cost, relatively easy to use, and highly shareable. And then for kind of creating these collections for either social media or maybe on your exhibit site, having content creation tools like Capwing, Canva, so Adobe products, you can get your collections out and combine them with either audio, other visuals, or text to combine the images, descriptions, and engaging formats. So it creates a more kind of eye-catching than basic collection listing. I think we have an example listed for one of our presenters today. So this is just an overview of the mediums and methods of digital storytelling. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Josh, and thank you to Josh and Tara for putting together this year's poster. There is a link in the chat where you can download this year's poster, and please share it far and wide with your colleagues, because we think it does have some good information, and it's always good to get people thinking about digital storytelling and the ways that they can actually do it. And maybe there are some archivists out there who think, well, I don't have the ability to do it. We can't get these tools. There are ways to make it happen, and we're happy to help you with those efforts. Okay, so thank you again for the poster. I would like to introduce this year's panelists for Electronic Records Day. And we have four amazing panelists that we're going to hear from today. I'm going to go ahead and read all four of their bios so we can just transition from speaker to speaker. Our first speaker is Elena Galahue. She is the Electronic Records Archivist at the Kentucky Department for Libraries and Archives. She has served in that position since March of 2024. Her role consists of handling all stages of Born Digital permanent records, from outreach and transfers to processing and ingesting the records into the Kentucky State Digital Archives and creating digital exhibits. Our second speaker is Megan Peterman. Megan Peterman is the Acting Director and State Archivist at the Delaware Public Archives. Our third speaker is Brett Fuller. Brett Fuller is the Public Affairs Specialist at the Archives Division of the Oregon Secretary of State. They are a historian and museum specialist who designs exhibits, makes social media content, and serves as a point person for much of the OSA's public engagement. They also write, edit, and publish the Oregon Blue Book, which is the state's almanac and fact book. Finally, we'll be hearing from Anna Peitzman. Anna Peitzman is the Digital Access Branch Head at the State Archives of North Carolina. Her team is responsible for the digital collections and web and social media presence of the State Archives in North Carolina. She has worked for digital accessibility in government and academic archives since 2017. I think you'll agree with me. We've got a great panel here from all across the country that can't wait to share with you their lessons on digital storytelling. I will ask that I'm going to go ahead and share our last slide here. There are plenty of links to join with COSA. There's COSA's website and resource center. We still have our Twitter handle in here, but don't necessarily follow us on Twitter. Go to the Facebook page or the YouTube page if you want to connect with COSA on social media. But we thank you enough. Can't thank you enough for connecting with the Council of State Archivists. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. If you have questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to put those into the chat. We will save our questions until the end to make sure we've got time for everyone to get through their presentations, but we have ample time because this webinar is scheduled for an hour and a half to get to Q&A, but we want to make sure all four of our speakers have plenty of time. And with that, I will now turn it over to Elena to start our presentations. Thank you again for joining us for Electronic Records Day, and you'll hear from me again at the end.
Okay, hey everybody. Can you see my screen? Good. Yeah, okay, awesome.
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
So hi, I'm Elena. And on your screen you can see all of the First Lady dolls. I'm going to talk to you today about the Kentucky First Ladies in Miniature digital exhibit. And fair warning, if you're afraid of dolls, leave for the next 15 minutes and come back. There's going to be a lot of pictures. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so a little bit of background. This collection is on the Kentucky State Digital Archives, which we first launched on Preservtica back in 2017. Our collections range from the late 18th century. Kentucky was a state in 1792, all the way up to this year. We have a whole lot of things from, digitized governor's documents to gifts. People send me gifts now, and they're in the archives. So that's fun. And prior to this exhibit, our only digital exhibit was the Hatfield and McCoy exhibit, which was less of a curated thing and more of, as we scanned them, we put all the documents together because people really like the Hatfield and McCoy feud. Okay, so why did we go for dolls? And I wish I could say it was just because we really liked dolls, but we absolutely stumbled into this. When I first started working at KDLA last year, quickly realized not all of our photographs had accessible descriptions with them. So I was doing an audit and pulling up all of the collections that needed them, and I stumbled across all of these dolls posed in a mansion. Not what I was expecting, and no context at all, just that the Division of Historical Properties had taken photos of dolls. Okay, what do I do with these? So I started Googling, I started talking to people, and they were like, oh, those are the First Lady dolls. those are at the Capitol. It's like a rite of passage to go see them. Like if students go see the Capitol, they stop by the dolls. So a very beloved exhibit. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna have to go to the Capitol and figure out which dolls are who, because there were no labels. I didn't know which first ladies were what. And Googling didn't help me at all because there's really nothing on Kentucky first ladies. They think only 5 of them had Wikipedia pages. The only list I could find was like, here's a list of the governors, and then like in small text to the side, the first lady. So I finally got to that point in my project of, okay, I finally need to tackle these dolls. And we go to the Capitol. It's probably January, February. And we had just recently found out that the Kentucky Capitol was going to be closing for renovations in March of this year. So this very beloved exhibit wasn't going to be accessible to the public. And I was already working on it. So I kept going, okay, well, like, I'm going to have these things, and there's not a lot out there on these women. I already have to go and add descriptions. Why don't I just, do research on close to 60 women? That'll be fun. That'll go great. And my manager was like, yeah, that sounds great. I wanted to get it done in time for March being Women's History Month so we could post about it, our new digital exhibit. It was going to go great. Don't ever schedule yourself to do research on 60 women in 2 to 4 weeks because it'll take longer. So once I'd taken the pictures, I kind of had everything I needed other than the historical research part. Like I said, we used Preservica, and I'll get into a little more of the background of that later, but it makes it super easy to create kind of digital exhibits and connecting photographs that we already had from a couple different collections into one cohesive like web page. I also used a lot of ancestry research. Thankfully, I work above the Kentucky Research Room, and so I would go downstairs and go, do you have anything? Do you have obituaries? Do we have any sources on these women? And some of them we really don't, which was so sad. So yeah, research took a long time. That probably took the longest. Actually compiling the collection in Preservica, all the metadata was done except the descriptions. We already had it in there. I just needed to connect it. And that probably took me a couple hours. So super, super simple. And if you're not familiar with Preservica, this is the old generation. Basically, you can click on each item and then change the archival structure and then create a link in the selected folder. So it's basically copying the file and hedging it in a separate area in a separate folder, but it still lives like in its original spot. And so I quickly did that for all, I think there's 58. Went to the new generation because in the new generation, you can add a separate title and a description. So I really took advantage of this. So that way the actual title of the photo could still exist within the metadata, but the display title would actually end up in First Lady order. So Susanna Shelby first, and then First Lady Garrett, etc. And then I added the description. All of them ended up having as much biography as I could get, birth year, death year, marriage, how many children, things like that. Would have loved to go more into them as a person, but when you're dealing with women who lived in the 18th century, just having a birth year sometimes was a good find. Yeah, and so then this is what it ended up looking like, just super, super simple. You can see everybody has their little bios. It's just like a static web page. It's not very maybe user friendly. If you click in, you have to click out instead of being able to go like one by one. But unless you're wanting to see the metadata, you can just scroll through and read everything. I think it ended up being 3 pages, Preservica. We've got Preservica to display, maybe 20-ish records per page. So kind of a nice bite-sized. Okay, and then there's a close-up. anyone wants to see more dolls, because the great thing about this collection is that it was created to display fashion throughout the years. So if you're really into fashion, very cool. You can see from the, late 18th, early 19th century fashion all the way to some of the more modern gowns that the first ladies wore. Now it's a replica of their inaugural gown that they wear. Okay. Now, what I was not expecting from this exhibit was that I ended up taking it outside of work. I was talking with a colleague and, oh my gosh, like I'm finding all these things, but if I have a library degree and I have access to the archives, on a daily basis, and I can't find anything on these women, what about Kentuckians? What about the public? So outside of work, we ended up creating an official Wikipedia page with a full list of these women, images if we could find them. And the goal is that one day they will have their own individual Wikipedia pages rather than just living on a list, but it's a start. We also assembled a virtual cemetery on Find a Grave, which was really fun. We don't have all of them, and some of them may be incorrect. It is on my to-do list. I have to call a church in Pennsylvania because apparently a first lady who died in the 1833 cholera epidemic in Lexington somehow got buried in rural Pennsylvania, but I'm pretty sure she's not. So I have to call them and figure out what in the world's going on there. Something else that ended up happening out of this project was the Kentucky Women Remembered digital exhibit. Right? 2 for the price of 1. That's great. I was at a kind of standard records transfer meeting with the Commission on Women, and they are currently run out of the Lieutenant Governor's office. It's for staff. They're only part-time. And we were talking about records transfers, and they're like, yeah, well, it's going to be a while. We're in the middle of this move, and we just really don't know where things are going, where we're going. It's like, oh my goodness, I know. I just did this thing because of that. And so I linked them to the First Lady Dolls exhibit, and I mean, their jaws kind of dropped. They're like, this is exactly what we want. We had no clue how these portraits, which are currently in the Capitol, they hang on the opposite wing of First Lady Dolls. Were going to be publicly accessible while the Capitol's under renovations for 3 to 5 to who knows how long years. And so we figured out a plan. If they could get me a good photograph of each portrait, I would do the metadata. I would put them up. I would make them basically an identical exhibit for the Kentucky Women Remembered exhibit. And they ended up getting me the files this week. And so that's what I've been working on this week, is getting those up there. And a little context about that exhibit. It honors basically important Kentucky women. So it could be anything from politics to musicians to actresses, writers. There's a nomination and people nominate important Kentuckians that they think should be honored with a portrait. So yeah, there's Alice Allison Dunnigan. She was the first African American to have press clearance to, I think it was the Senate. Okay, so there's a quick, I mean, it's basically the same thing. Preservica, just a static. I linked everything in. They already had descriptions, so I didn't have to do deep historical research. I just copied and pasted, and it was wonderful. Yeah, so results. We obviously got the Kentucky First Ladies in Miniature digital exhibit up and running for public access. And I have been actually discussing with KHS, the Kentucky Historical Society, and one of their archivists were like, oh, hey, we're actually going to get the First Lady dolls. So they're publicly accessible after all. We're so excited about that. If you're in Frankfurt, you can go visit KHS and see them in the lobby. Or if you don't really want to come to Kentucky, you can visit my exhibit. And I mean, mine has descriptions and research, and theirs are just the dolls. So super excited though. I think we're talking about linking the physical exhibit to the digital one. Also ended up doing work outside of work because public history is fun. So super excited about that and where that leads. I love the fact that I get to work and then also do public history as part of my job. Uh, yeah, and then collabing with the Commission on Women has been fantastic. They're excited. We're so excited. We're so excited. We started talking about maybe hosting the actual physical exhibit in our building during renovation. So we'll see where that goes. And it's been fantastic to get to work closely with another agency instead of them just being scared that I'm contacting them for records. So yeah, conclusion, projects can surprise you and turn way bigger than you thought that they would. With lots of collaborations. I mean, we got 2 digital exhibits that we really weren't expecting to have, but we're so happy that we do. And everything I used was, things we already had. It might not be the flashiest or most intuitive or user friendly, but we have these good digital exhibits that create public access for all the folks who can't come to Frankfurt or the capital to view these things. And I think that's so important in what we do with electronic records. Yeah, and finally, just once again, don't tell your manager that yes, I can get this up in March, because it won't be done in March. You will get it done in April. Okay, thanks. Here's my contact. Feel free to reach out if you ever have any questions.
Thank you, Elena. That was so fascinating. It may be a miniature exhibit, but it had an oversized impact. So well done. Now let's hear from Megan in Delaware. Megan, the floor is yours.
Hello, hello. 1 second to share my screen. There we go. Hopefully we're all set. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Megan Peterman, and I am the Acting Director and State Archivist at the Delaware Public Archives. But I'm also still the Archives' Community Relations and Marketing Manager. So that is why I'm here today. Today I'll be sharing, how our organization reimagined social media content into digital exhibits for our lobby, connecting our collections to visitors in new and accessible ways. This project really started as sort of a creative experiment. We've had a few years of pretty good online engagement with our social media platforms, and we recently had a few, we have had some traditional online exhibits that still need to be refreshed. They're a little outdated, but they're a bit more difficult for us to do because we have some limitations on our WordPress site as being a state organization. While we can do some customization, our site is primarily administered by Delaware's Government Information Center, and they run most state agency websites. So we thought we might be able to use the social media content that we'd already shared to bring a similar energy to our physical space, but still digital sharing, to tell stories with the materials we already had in a bit different of a way. So to give you a bit of background, the Delaware Public Archives was established in 1905, and our current building was constructed in 2001, and it was attached onto our original historic 1938 building. So I have a picture of our newer portion of the building where our lobby is right on there now. It's a really pretty public space. It's been refreshed a few times since it was built in 2001. And we have meeting rooms that are open to state agencies for use. We have a large research room that people can come in, and a pretty big lobby area. But in addition, the cool thing about us is, in addition to being the archives lobby, our building also serves as the welcome center for downtown historic Dover. So we have a pretty steady stream of visitors, tourists, local families, people just coming to use the bathroom because we have a big parking lot that's public, and you don't have to pay for it. So in addition to the people who come in for meetings or for research, we're getting additional visitors that might not be coming to us because we're in archives. It's also worth noting that at our archives, among other sections, we have a public services section that handles the research room with patron requests and gives educational presentations and does a lot of research for us, but we also have a designated marketing team that generates all our promotional materials and social media content. So as you'll see in the photo, we have one main TV screen on that feature wall, and then we have 4 additional screens. You can only see 2 in this particular photo, but there's a set of double doors on the right side of that second TV, and then there's 2 more screens. And then you can also see a little bit in the top left-hand corner of the photo. There's an additional TV. There's 3 more in a bit of a row there on the ramp that lead to our physical exhibit hall. So on the main and the lobby screens, those 4 in the general seating area, we do quarterly exhibits. They're short-term and high-impact sort of digital displays. And then the ramp TVs, they didn't in this particular photo, but they currently have more of a permanent history of the archives exhibit that gives context to who we are and what we do for visitors that aren't accustomed to that. And our goal with these digital exhibits was pretty simple, to make something that was short-term, low cost, and high impact, while also highlighting our collections in a bit of a more modern way. And so instead of doing physical cases, which we do have a bit of a physical exhibit with all the TVs that I came into, these were already established when I got the job. We were sort of like, how could we tell these stories using what we already have digitally instead of putting physical items out? So, whoops. So the inspiration for our digital exhibits really did come from our social media work. Both of the digital exhibits shown here, there's Old School and then Unusual Treasures. They began a social media series where we posted like one thematic photo of a collection item every day that month. Old School was specifically exploring Delaware's closed schools, so their histories, the communities they served, and how many of those buildings have since been repurposed or lost over time, which struck a really nostalgic chord with our audience. People were commenting with memories and photos and stories of, attending or teaching at those schools. So it became a meaningful way to like connect personal history with public records. And then Unusual Treasures, on the other hand, that was a staff pick series. So it featured quirky and unexpected items from our collections that made staff go, oh, or smile, or like, I can't believe this thing was at the archives. So that was really cool. It gave staff a voice to sort of let their curiosity and sense of humor shine through while showing the range and richness of what we preserve at the archives. And both series really did perform pretty well online. They were fun, they were visual and engaging. And so we realized that those theme qualities could translate pretty beautifully into our lobby space, bringing the online audience's enthusiasm back into the building, especially since we get that traffic that's not really coming to us because we're archives. So once we decided to move forward with that plan, we built a process that was pretty simple and flexible and replicable so that staff could easily swap or update the content. And so the main TV from the previous photo just features a single image or even like a short looping video that introduces the exhibit's main theme. What is up in our building right now is Old School, and it's just a collage of black and white photos of the schools that have closed. For Unusual Treasures, we had we dipped our toe a little bit in AI because it was an Indiana Jones theme. And then it featured a video. We had done an interview about one of the unusual treasures we were featuring, which was the state Bible. So that just played on a loop. It bothered our poor front desk staff who had to listen to it all day, every day for a period of time. But that one was really cool too. So the main TV has that, and then the 4 side TVs just displayed slideshows of the collection items with their descriptions, which were already written because of the social media series. To design the visuals, we used a few different tools. Kapwing and Adobe Express are both cloud-based tools. They're good for making just clean, consistent graphics really quickly, especially if you don't really have graphic design experience, or if you don't have the full Adobe Creative Suite. So this is what I do have a picture of what Kapwing looks like. And it's really easy to import content, drag and drop, add transitions and all that. Okay. And then one of the other tools we use a little bit is Envato. Envato is a paid subscription, but it provides like templates and subtle animations that are good for like the intro on the main TV screen. They just give the content a bit of a more professional look without a ton of design time given their templates. And then we also utilize BrightSign. It's our signage player for 5 of the TVs. We don't have it on all of the TVs right now, but it lets us control what plays on what screens and how long that goes for. So right now it's just on the ramp TVs and the 1 main screen TV. The other 4 that are in the lobby require manual updates with the USB stick, which is a little frustrating and annoying. So we are working to get them all integrated under BrightSign so that each TV has their own player and we can update the content with their cloud-based software for easier updates and scheduling. For both of these exhibits, the captions for each slide were adapted directly from the social media text. They were lightly edited for a bit of extra clarity and then expanded a bit for a printed and digital booklet. And so that booklet lives physically in a little rack card holder next to each of the screens for people that come in. But it also is available online as a downloadable PDF. So it includes all the items from the exhibit plus a few extra ones, and then it has slightly longer descriptions than what appears on the TVs, just to give a little extra oomph for that takeaway. So we rotate the exhibits quarterly, which keeps the content pretty fresh and hopefully encourages repeat visits. And the best part is that it's pretty fast. The TVs are already there, the content already exists, and so we just do a little pizzazz with some easy software and turn it into a fresh exhibit. And we've seen some pretty great results from this approach because I'm able to label it as an exhibit and it's not just a social media post. It's caught the eyes of some local news organizations who have reached out and asked us to report on it, which is really great and certainly increases the visibility of the archives. And increased visitor engagement is the biggest win. You know, people stop in the lobby to watch the slideshows or point out familiar faces or schools or, wow, look at that weird thing that was at the archives, or even starting conversations with our front desk staff. And that sometimes leads them in to go into the research room and see what else we have in store, which we really love. And then because our building serves as a welcome center for the downtown area, many of those visitors, you know, didn't expect an exhibit. So it gets fresh eyes on our content and provides a really great first impression of what the archives has. Additionally, this model is super easy to maintain. It takes very little staff time. Once the content's loaded, it just runs automatically. And the worst thing that you have going on is a tech issue where the TV freezes or somebody forgets to turn something on. So that's super easy. And another benefit is that even though it's the same content that appeared daily as a social media post, now it lives in like a cohesive, more shareable format, which I think makes it more impactful. And now it's accessible in person and through the booklet, you know, physical, digital, and maybe even ultimately we'll see an online exhibit. So that's actually part of what's next for us. Some next steps might be, you know, fully implementing Bright Sign across all the lobby screens to streamline exhibit changes. That does cost a little bit more money to buy the players, but we are looking at that. Adding a physical component where I would love to, I know we're talking about digital and electronic records, but I would love to put U-shaped custom cases around the tables to add physical items that would supplement what was going on the screens. And then I'm also working with our IT person he's very into scripts and automation. So I'm hoping that maybe we can even get a script that takes our digital booklet and turns it into a web-based exhibit so we can share it on our website with, again, minimal extra work, and that will allow it to live on even longer. And that's it from me. So if you'd like to learn more or see examples of our digital exhibits, you can scan the QR code here to visit our website or reach out to me directly, megan.peterman@delaware.gov. We just found that this model, like starting small, repurposing what you already have, can really make an impact without requiring some big budgets or complex technology. So thank you so much for listening, and I will drop the links to the digital booklets in the chat.
Thank you, Megan. We'll keep the QR code up for just another second.
Sure.
I really want to travel to Dover now to see your exhibit gallery.
We'd
and
love to
also
have you.
and also the building that's the introduction to historic Dover. You know, that's a great pool to come.
Yeah, it's awesome. We are huge parking lot and like right at the beginning of where people would walk down to go see all the things. So we have tons of brochures and not. So it's awesome that we get that clientele in our building.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Megan. I see the question in the chat. We'll save it for the end, but we'll come back to and ask Megan that question. But for now, I'd like to take us out west to our colleague Brett Fuller, who's joining us from Oregon. Brett, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you, Josh.
And I'm going to share your slides. So hold on just a second.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as an introduction, my name is Brett Fuller. I work here at the Oregon State Archives, and we're going to be looking today at a handful of experiments that we have done in digital storytelling since 2020. Oh, there we go. Yes, experiments in digital storytelling, public engagement in a post-pandemic world. So, like I said, we've tried a couple of things over the past 5 years or so, and they have had varying degrees of real success, right? And they've also had a couple of drawbacks. So, Josh, if you wouldn't mind moving over to the next slide. The first is based on this exhibit that we started back in 2020. It was going to be, actually, it is an exhibit about the centennial of the 19th Amendment, which was passed in 1920, and how Oregon women had won the right to vote in 1912, and they used a lot of the momentum to kind of push that suffrage fight further east. The only problem was we had closed our doors to the public because COVID was just starting to ramp up. And so we built this whole exhibit with the expectation that uh we would eventually reopen, right? And it took a lot longer than we anticipated to start bringing people back into the building. So we tried instead, what if we put this online? Slide, please. Um, Now, when we moved things online, what we found was this was a really big exhibit. There were a lot of words. And yeah, we had everything here, but it was really complicated to move through. And if you wanted to track through anything, if you wanted to find anything, you often had to, press multiple links. You had to kind of push around and try and remember what you were looking for. The images were small, it was the best we could do with the tools that we had at the time, right? And it's still up, and we're still really proud of the work that we did, but it's an imperfect fit, as it says on the slide. But we learned a lot. Slide, please. Um, you know, uh, there were several things, and many of you have already identified a lot of these pros and cons already in your presentations, right? Like putting something online makes it immediately accessible to a lot of people all at once, and it lets people come back to us. They don't have to go into the building to visit anything, but um, it's it's not an easy thing to move through. You can't look at an exhibit on the internet the same way that you would engage with an exhibit in real life. It might work for some people, but there are a lot of different kinds of museum goers, and they all engage differently. And so, trying to find ways to meet that. Were moderately successful at first, but we tried a few other things too. So, Josh, if you wouldn't mind doing another slide. Um, One of those is we started hosting a lot of our image collections online. We've got a bunch of historical trademarks that we have available to us, and we have also been very lucky as an organization to have some really wonderful photographers that have worked for us in the past, and they've created a slew of like thousands and thousands of images. And these are really interesting. They're an important part of our past and contemporary collection of stuff, but they don't on their own tell a story, right? Like we can add as much data as we want about the context of these pictures, but they are the pieces of story and like not really story themselves. Still, they're great. Please visit. And the other problem with this that we found was the funding can dry up. There's a degree of this organization that we're working with called the Northwest Digital Heritage Hub that is connected to federal funding, and that future is uncertain. I would say. So on the other hand, we can choose social media. So Josh, if you slide again, um, our social media program is actually pretty successful. We've got the editor of the Blue Book has been running our social media program, and she's great at it. She's got a real eye for it. But look, like it said, we've got 14,000 Facebook followers, right? Like that's 14,000 people that we are potentially reaching with our post. But even with that information, or like even with that number, as my reference manager often says, it's like catching lightning in a bottle. Like you never really know how much traction you're going to get with a post. And sometimes we can pour hours and hours and hours into something like that, and we get almost nothing. Versus sometimes we just throw up like a picture of a mountain, and we get like 14,000 interactions. It's wild, and there's no way to tell. In addition, because we are a state organization, it's cool that we get a lot of people being able to comment on our post, especially if they're Oregonians that are saying like, "Oh, I remember that," or like, "Oh, that person in that picture was my uncle," things like that. But we also get a lot of people that just use it as a platform to gripe about aspects of state government that we have no control over, it's just the way things kind of go. So that's been also moderately successful, great outreach yet again, but like we can't really manage it or control it. We can only do and work so much in. Um, it's it's complex. Uh, okay, so slide though, we do have a greater success story, and that's been in the use of ArcGIS story maps. So when I said before that we published the Oregon Blue Book, it's a book. It's the state's almanac and fact book. But in every center of that book, we have a large color insert that tells a narrative story. We've been doing it for I think maybe about 10 years now. And slide, you'll be able to see some other ones. So this is the Blue Book, and that's the color insert. We chose the 50th anniversary of Hell's Canyon, which if y'all haven't heard about Hell's Canyon, it's on our border with Idaho on the Snake River. It is the largest canyon in North America, and that is with me having full knowledge that the Grand Canyon exists. Like Hell's Canyon is wild. And we built this narrative of the story of the story of the 50 years of it becoming a national recreation area as our color insert. Now, what we also did was contiguously build a story map, an ArcGIS story map alongside that color insert. They kind of like support each other, but they are also standalone things. You don't need one to understand the other. Um, Slide, please, and you'll see some pieces of it. Um, Now, this is a really cool program. We've done some work with it in the past, and I did some work with it back when it was new, when I was working for the Texas Department of Transportation in their cultural affairs. And it's complex. We get to use all kinds of media. We can add photos, we can have video, it's an ArcGIS, so you can have a bunch of different complex map systems involved too. It really supports a lot. You can embed things from the internet, you can link out to the internet. But what I found was really, really useful about this program was that people can engage with your online exhibit in this system in a way that is more natural to how they would engage with a physical space. Some people, they just run through an exhibit, start to finish, they barely read anything, they just like image, 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 read the headline, and some people chew through everything, and some people ignore the stuff they don't care about and really focus on the things they do. Some people, can't access cards and writing as well as others. Some people need to hear something. Some people benefit from seeing a person speaking, and we found it to be incredibly useful in supporting our story about this recreation area and about the scenic byway that runs through it. Um, it's really it's really pretty cool. Um, and doing it in conjunction with a physical object, it's not tied also to a physical exhibit space because we don't really do that very much or as much for the public anymore. But having it tied into our publication, um, that was really successful. So we did find a number of things in all of these processes. Slide, please. Uh, namely, like I have said, and what many of us have already said, is that designing content for these spaces is a great way to get it out to people. And conversely, as an archive, it is to show people that we exist and that we are a great place for you to come and do research, right? Not everyone knows that we're there. Most people don't know the difference between an archive and a library either. But our biggest hurdle, I think, and in talking with other people about this, was that if you couldn't like actually work with the program, if the user interface of your online exhibit wasn't intuitive, and it took work to look through, you were going to leave it. Like you were going to look at the thing that you thought was interesting, or you were going to find the thing, like you were going to do a Google search for something, or a piece of our exhibit was going to show up, and then you would look at that and leave. Um, but we did find, and Story Maps has helped us with this, is that when you give people a bunch of different ways to engage and they get to choose the way that they engage best, it also helps facilitate interest in other ways that they might not have ordinarily engaged, you know? Um, and we can't make everything for everyone, but we can continue trying to find ways to make everything that we have as accessible as possible to the people around us. We that kind of commitment to equity in your exhibit space is very rewarding on a public level. Um, but don't just take my word for it. Josh, please, to my final slide. Um, if you wouldn't mind to check us out and see for yourself. I put the QR codes for both of our exhibits on here if you want to use your phone. I will also put the links in the chat for them too. And I did this specifically because we live in a time when not everyone has a laptop or a computer that they can use, right? Like having a way for your exhibit to show on a phone in a way that is usable and interesting is a struggle. The Hell's Canyon story map works better on mobile than the suffrage exhibit does, but nothing, like I said, works perfectly. Uh, so yeah, I'll put those in the chat. Check them out, see what you think, and I'm happy to answer any questions here at the end of our thing once we move through to Anna. So thank you all, I appreciate it, and thank you, Josh, for pushing all my slides around.
Thank you, Brett. And Brett's going to put those links in the chat. So if you didn't get a chance to scan those QR codes, you will still get those links in just a second. Thank you, Brett, for putting those in there. I'm going to stop sharing. Fascinating to see what you're doing with the story map tool. I can't wait to discuss it more in Q&A, but we'll hand it over here at the end to discuss the quirks of Cortex. Anna, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Josh. Can everyone see my screen okay?
We see the screen, but it's the creator mute, not the presentation.
Okay.
There we go. That looks right.
Okay, so thanks everyone. I will say before we get started that could not pass up the opportunity to use the QU alliteration, quirks of Cortex. So today I really wanted to spend some time talking about the platform itself, with knowing that AM Cortex is a newer platform solution. Just really digging down into those details and giving y'all a view, especially if it's something that you're considering adopting. I'd put a plug in for Cortex. It's a very user-friendly platform. And so we will talk about some of the quirks, but also some of the benefits. Hold on one second. Let me reshare. Just screen 2. All right. Sorry, y'all. It is not letting me navigate through the slides.
Would you like me to share your slides, Anna, and see if I can do it?
Okay. Sorry about that, y'all. Okay, are we seeing my screen now? Okay.
You're seeing your screen. Yeah, not the presentation. We're seeing like the PowerPoint program.
You're seeing the PowerPoint.
Like the program, like we've got all the slides on the left-hand side.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm gonna stay in this for now because when I went full screen was when things were not letting me go. Okay, so all right, so let's talk about some of the context that led to the adoption of Cortex. some of our longstanding traditions here at the State Archives of North Carolina. We have a rotating display case in the search room that gets updated roughly quarterly. That's done in conjunction with the Public Services team and the Display Case Committee. We have a whole group of committees working together with our social media and outreach efforts. We also, in terms of digital outreach, we use a History for All the People blog that's hosted on WordPress. And if we have some time today, additional time today and interest, I can probably do a live demo. Although I will say, with the issues I had with the slides, we'll see. So we've been using that blog space sort of comparably to an exhibit space while we were hosting our digital collections through Content DM. And so we had a migration from Content DM to Cortex, AM Cortex in 2023. So a lot of that year was spent on the migration of our pretty robust digital collections over into the Cortex space. And then also in that same year, 2024 going into 2023 going into 2024, a big team shift. And so once things got a little bit more settled, we do have one live exhibit now celebrating Juneteenth, and that went live last year, celebrating North Carolina's celebrations throughout time of the Juneteenth holiday. We have one upcoming digital exhibit that should be debuting in early 2026, focused on When Are We Us, which is a theme adopted by North Carolina and the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources that really focuses on all the pieces of the puzzle that brought us into where we are today. And then as we build momentum, our goal is to really get into a swing of things on a quarterly basis for the exhibits. All right, so I wanted to give you all a view from the digital collection side, the front end side, how our patrons experience the exhibit, and then we'll delve into the Cortex side. So this is a snapshot of our digital exhibits page on our digital collections. And I will say, we run the digital collections in conjunction with the State Library of North Carolina. And so they are also working to build out their digital exhibit space. And so this allows folks to toggle between the two. When you click onto our digital exhibits, this will look a little bit different, once we have more up, but it takes you right into the exhibit landing page, which can be kind of an abrupt process. So we're still thinking through some ways of easing patrons into that experience. So this is the landing page of the exhibit, and it gets everyone ready for the content they're about to experience, providing that context. Yeah. And then we toggle down into the exhibit itself, and here are the documents. And there are several different navigation options, which is both gives some pros and cons to the user experience, I would say, in Cortex. You can jump to the very last slide. You'll see here on these arrow buttons, you can navigate one at a time, or you can see this, hopefully this is visible, but at the bottom there are numbers 1 through however many slides you have, and you can toggle between those slides. You can pick any number, which is nice in terms of the ability to move around within the exhibit that way. If you do have a certain narrative flow, it's just something to keep in mind that people might be knocked out of it as they work through the exhibit. Oops, there we go. So one thing I want to talk about, our first quirk, is that the caption options are not don't show up necessarily unless you know to hover over this middle menu button area. So this allows, there are 3 options. It allows you to go full screen, change the size of the screen so you can see the image larger, and this text field, it gets smaller. And then finally the eye shows the caption. And what that looks like, once you've clicked on it, it will move over into in front of the image itself. And so it'll slide over that way. And so wanting to find out if there are more ways to make that more easily findable. All right, and so now I want to take us into Cortex itself and see what it takes to put up what we were just looking at. So in Cortex, you can see there is different pages that we can that we build out, and so this is where we're also working on building out our digital collections. Down here near the bottom of the image, we have our digital exhibit space. It is hosted on a content page, and we'll talk a little bit more about that soon. But there are dedicated in Cortex exhibition pages, and that's a very small button, but let's jump right over into it. When you go to edit the exhibition page, at the very top, you'll see page properties. And one reason that this is page types are important are that the page properties change based on whichever type of page you are building. And this just allows you options to add a description to the exhibit and better increase your search engine optimization score. And then also navigation options. For us, we're making sure that these are including contents in the search results. Right. And so when you scroll down a little bit so what we're seeing here is the very tail end of the page properties. And within the exhibit, it's called exhibition page, within Cortex, you then have card types that allow you to build the exhibit. And so there's an exhibition card in the exhibit page. I will say that one thing that's interesting about that is that then you're doing almost all of your work in the exhibition in this one card, which might be a little bit different from other platforms that we're used to, where you can drill down in different ways to see that content. And let me pull up the next slide. So each image that we were seeing before on the front end gets, when you go to edit the exhibition card, those get expanded into these, it's just one long list. And so every item that's in your exhibit is going to be in one long list in your browser. And the setup is for each of those looks like this. You'll have the option to select the background image. There's a space here for putting in your title, and then also a subtitle, and then the text that you would see on the screen itself. The item pages have also the option to display on half page or 3/4 of a page, so you can embed that space that the image takes up relative to the text. Those are the 2 main options. And then You can also select two different options for your item source. You can there's a space in Cortex that's called your media library, and that is a space that exists outside of your assets, so the digital collections. You can pull in your digital collections and link directly to those assets. So that's an option for folks to be able to directly go from the exhibit to your digital collections. And so staying in that same space, and it's like, oh, I really want to research on this topic. Let me go out to that item that's in this specific digital collection. So that's a nice set of options to work with in terms of those two source types. Underneath each item that's in the exhibit, you see there's these options for the description of the end title, and then also the caption. And again, you'll see here, there's this space to update the caption, but nothing about how the caption interacts with the page, the exhibit page itself, once people are on and viewing it. I will say one of my favorite quirks that I like to complain about is this at the very bottom left. When I had first mentioned that the way that these are all laid out, it's all in, you're just scrolling through your browser to see all of your items. There is an option to move them up and down. And this is true across Cortex, so not just in digital exhibits, but also in the digital collections. When you're adding page types, there's this option to move an individual item up or down here in the bottom left corner of that screen. The quirk in question is that it can only do it one at a time, and so there's no drag and drop function. And it can be, as you can imagine, if you're working with a lot of content and a lot of items, it's a very painstaking process. I will say though that is a known issue and with the development team at Cortex. So that is hopefully something that's going to be a little bit more easy to use in the next year or two. At this point in time, with AM Cortex being relatively new, they've been building out their functionality around video embeds and video hosting. For now, what we've been doing is the content types that we were working with are either images or PDFs. And so hopefully in the coming years, we'll be able to explore more content types to add. So you get some of that other ways for people to access, other ways for people to learn. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me with any questions. Thank y'all for your time and also your patience with me while I was having sharing issues.
Thank you, Anna, for a great presentation. And I think one of the questions that I see in the chat will probably let you do a live demo if it'll work in a minute. So we are, let's see, we've got some good questions already in the chat, but please add in more questions as you have them. The first question, I'll go back to Peter's question. This was for Megan. With your quarterly exhibits, and this is probably a good question for everybody because I think everybody is mentioning the creation of exhibits. How far in advance do you start planning for an exhibit? Or how long does the process take to build one of your exhibits? Because all four of you have done exhibits of different kinds. So I'll let Megan start since it was directed at Megan, but I'll let all four of you answer this. So we'll start with Megan, then we'll go to Elena, Brett, and then Anna.
Sure. So for the ones that are driven by social media content that already exists, where the descriptions had to be generated for that social media series, I would say no more than like 2 months. That way we had all the content and we could, in some cases you weren't able to copy paste, you had to retype. So checking for spacing and look and feel and all that took a bit of time, but not long at all, 1 to 2 months. For if we don't do it based off of content that already exists, I would still say 1 to 2 quarters max. Just because our marketing team is doing a number of other things that don't really yet allow us to plan that quite that far out. I'm taking a bit of a hiatus or break of sorts for Christmas, and so we're just going to put Christmas photos up, and it's not really going to be an exhibit per se. We're just going to put a little caption that explains what it is and load that for Christmas, but we are working on the spring content now. Thank you for the question.
Elena?
Yeah, I mean, I think my answer is going to be really similar. I think I went to go take photos of the doll exhibit mid-February, and we had it done by April. So it was about 2 months. It was pretty intense 2 months. That was my main focus during that time period. But about that, with the Kentucky Women Remembered, I got the files on Monday, and it's about 90% done on Friday. But all of the heavy lifting was already done. I just had to do the metadata for that.
And there's also the time built in for the building that relationship with that other agency, I would say, right? That's
Oh
part of
yeah,
that too.
this has been in the works probably since about August, July or August. But once I have the stuff and I can actually work on it, 5 days.
Fantastic. Brett?
So when we were building more physical exhibits, our turnaround was around 8 or 9 months or so, right? Like we would usually put out one physical exhibit a year, sometimes two. Turning to online though, and tying our online exhibits to the Oregon Blue Book, it is now years of planning in advance. This book has been published by the Oregon Secretary of State's Department every other year since 1911. And so we just continue that cycle, you know? And other things make that, like, if we're trying to do everything that we've done so far or recently online has been about land and actually getting to the places in Oregon to take the photos of the thing that we're doing the exhibit on is actually only doable in certain times of the year. When our manager went out to the mountains to take photos of Hell's Canyon, and to raft on the river and stuff like that, you actually can't really safely make it through some of the mountain passes until June, May and June. It's rugged, and so we have to really time it with that and with a lot of the interactions that we have to have with other organizations. And on the front end, we have to get approval from all the way up the chain to the Secretary of State of Oregon of what the color insert and exhibit is going to be. And all of that takes time, which does have the benefit, though, of us getting a lot of time to percolate on it. We can really refine things. It doesn't have to necessarily be put together and thrown out there. We can look at something and think on it for a couple of months. And so that's really nice. So a while is my answer.
I've got to say that sending an archivist to be in a raft in a river in the bottom of the largest canyon in the country has got to be the coolest offsite assignment that any of us have ever had.
I mean, to be fair,
So
we have a couple of folks around here, myself included, that aren't true archivists. I'm a historian. My manager is a publications and communications person. The organization that we have really exists and thrives because we are reaching out to people who have different skill sets and applying them all to the use of the state archives.
another lesson learned there, maybe unintentional, but a good lesson to
It's
learn.
been great.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Brett. Anna?
In terms of timing for each exhibit, that's something we're still working out. In terms of exhibits in general, that's going to take, we're planning for the year well ahead of time. And so things get mapped out, just in recent meetings, talking about what all of 2026 will look like. And so that's pretty standard practice. I would agree, though, couple months for each. It takes a lot to put together the flow and the narrative and find everything. And yeah, so I would say for each exhibit, hopefully that's what we're looking at. But then also, I mentioned we have a few committees. So we're working with staff across the division to, so we're not, it's not just a couple people on our team who are building the content entirely, while we are, the main source for posting and everything. We really do have a great engaged staff that brings a lot of good ideas, a lot of good content. So it's really finding that balancing act of bringing those ideas together and then charting them out to get to that quarterly pace.
Thank you, Anna. Karen commented that she wanted to say that she really likes the concept of Brett's concept of experimenting with digital storytelling, giving the notion of playing with content and method its due respect. I like that idea as well. I think that, and the idea of digital storytelling is iterative, that you're always going to be changing and innovating your lessons because to based on what kind of return on investment and impact you have. Because like you said, Brett, it's kind of an unknown until you try it to see what will stick with our audiences and what won't. And I'm sure you've seen that too, Megan, like in your galleries, which galleries resonate, which ones don't. So thank you for that comment. Thomas Pruce has a question for Brett. Brett mentioned using social media. It's not really a question, but I think I can turn it into one. Thomas says using social media always also brings to the issue of being subject to the platform's limitations, such as lack of design and potential for abuse. Have you seen either of those problems rising in your use of Facebook and other platforms and social media for digital exhibits?
Yes, yeah. I mean, necessarily, it's a program, and it's a program that is owned by someone that isn't us, right? And specifically, it is also a program that is designed to return investments to its shareholders, right? It's a private company. The same thing is true with ArcGIS. Like I'm singing its praises, and it has done a lot for us, but ultimately we don't own it, and so we are continually subject to the limitations of those platforms. And also, I think potentially problematically in the sense that we don't own it, it's that any one of these companies could disappear tomorrow. That's just the way that because they're a part of the marketplace, they could just go, and that has led to some kind of just like unknowns about the future. But just trying to do the best that we can with the tools that we have available.
Thank you, Brett. We have one other question for you specifically about ArcGIS.
Shoot, yeah.
Jessica says ArcGIS story maps are becoming really popular with digital humanities storytelling too. It's a great platform that seems more end user friendly and modern than Omeka and its compatriots. And she asks you specifically, did you already have an ESRI paid or enterprise option, or did you use the no cost option?
To my knowledge, we have a paid option. We're pretty well supported here. We've got paid connections to ArcGIS, paid to the Adobe suite, and I cannot emphasize more how useful those tools are. So if you are with an organization that is wondering, like, should we spend the money to get access to these higher quality tools, I think it's worth it. I think that we have put out some really quality things, and you can look at our social media and you can look at our ArcGIS, and you can decide for yourselves. But yes, I believe that we're paid.
Thank you, Brett. We have two questions for Anna that really go hand in hand. One's a comment, one's a question. Megan says, thank you for the behind the scenes with Cortex. We just signed up with them this year, but we didn't see the exhibits module, so this was very useful to see. And then Thomas says, my understanding that Cortex is a digital asset manager, not a traditional exhibit software. Does this present a challenge? So since we have two questions about the, as a digital asset manager versus an exhibit, did you want to speak to, how it does both? And this might be the good place for if you want to show, if you can show that back end of what it looks like. Because I think you said it looks similar, whether it's the digital assets or the exhibit gallery from what I recall.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to delve in a little bit more to that. Thomas, to your question about it being a dam, having the exhibit module as well, in addition to the dam, is actually a feature of it, and not a quirk. It allows us that option when I was talking about deciding our item source. you know, integrating what's already in our asset collections. And so, you know, I think where it mostly there is still a lot of figuring out the source itself and pulling that into that page. Let's see, let's give this another go. That's showing up at the homepage of Cortex.
Yes, it is.
So this is where we're doing a lot of that dam work. And then when we toggle over to sites, this here is where we can see the digital exhibits. All right, and so I'm loading the Juneteenth exhibit here.
And you can see the other ones are all content pages, and that was the only exhibition page for now.
Yeah, for now. And so really, like, from when you first click in, it gives you that really like a broad view. And then all you do is hit edit, and it breaks it out. And so I'm doing the scrolling just to demonstrate. This is where when you're in a situation where you want to do that up down motion, it will let you go at one at a time, and then kind of pops you back down to the bottom. So there's a lot of
But if you
scrolling
add a new
involved.
thing, doesn't it just add it at the very bottom? And then you
It
have
sure
to,
does. Yeah.
yeah.
When you add a new item, it'll add it to the bottom. And so if you're wanting to add something kind of near the top, it could take some time. And that's something that is of note for us, especially when we're building the digital collections. And then here, you know, I think I lived it. Let's back out of this one since that one's live. It's just, I think I would say, Thomas, to your question, like it's probably the biggest challenge is just figuring out the sourcing of that material. It's really nice that it can connect to the assets library. So it's both a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, and I can comment on this a little bit from this side that I'm not the manager, and Anna's the manager of our Cortex site, but I'm one of the people on the outreach committees and, you know, over here in records description, putting together some of the content. And I think it's really great that we can put together exhibits from our digital collection, because the way we've done digital collections traditionally is they are, you know, usually there's a few subjects, but usually it's a series. You know, it's a collection or a series. It's not going to be based on a subject or a theme. So we can, with this digital exhibit, we can pull stuff from existing digital collections and create a narrative that doesn't go along with, you know, here's one item from one of our private collections, here's one item from a governor's papers, here's one item from a county court docket, instead of just having to say, like, this is all the pages from that court docket and this is all the proclamations from Governor McCrory. It gives us a little bit of flexibility to reuse our digital assets. It kind of to all of three of your points, Elena, Brett, and Megan. It lets us use our digital assets to create that narrative and that intro point, as opposed to just here is everything, which I think is a really nice option, which we didn't have before with Content DM.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. It's a really, I think it's a really exciting opportunity for us and one we're excited to keep exploring. Before I stop sharing, I wanted to give you all a little bit of interactive view into the exhibit itself. This is, again, that landing page that I was mentioning. And then you see it kind of all slides in. And this is how you figure out, oh, these are the things that I can do. I can go into full screen, change the width of the page. So you can change the default in those settings to either half page or 3/4 page, but it can still be changed by the user. And then viewing the caption, and it slides over. And I can toggle between, this is the last page. Now I can jump over to page 5. I can do that as well with the arrows down here at the bottom.
Thank you so much, Anna. If anyone has any other questions, please put them in the chat. We have 9 minutes left. I do have one question for Elena. I think it's really great that you were able to work with the Capitol building and work with some, the Kentucky Women's Association. I may have been getting that name wrong, but with the portraits. What was the name of the association?
The Commission on Women.
Thank you. Thank you very much. But do you think that there could be potential for other partnerships with other state agencies because Joy, who's the president of COSA, put a comment that it was she really loved your project because it was a great way to show other state agencies a value case for the archives and how they could collaborate with other parts of state government. Do you think that that's something that you'd like to explore and maybe work with some other, maybe not every building's going to be renovated like the Capitol, but maybe work with some of the other state agencies to be like, when you transfer your records, we can also create this thing for you and we can help you with that, that part of the puzzle.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been doing a lot of outreach this year and working with a lot of different agencies, and just having that, as a case study of, hey, we worked with the Commission on Women to do this, I think will hopefully help with the buy-in of, it's not scary to transfer your records. You can still access them and look at, what the public can view. So I would absolutely love to continue, now that the ball's kind of started rolling, and keep doing more exhibits with other agencies.
Thank you, Elena. I'm looking forward to that. And as a slight preview, currently, the plan, tentatively, is that next year's electronic records theme will look at transitions, because mid-year elections are big transitions for a lot of states, and records transfers. So you sort of have anticipated what we might be talking about next year. But we're always looking at ways to encourage agencies to do it. And I don't think anyone's thought to present their records in an outreach fashion like this in terms of as a incentive to transfer. So it's a really innovative idea. So thank you, Elena. I appreciate that. And with that, I think we've exhausted all the questions. So it just leaves me to once again thank all of you for your input. Thank you so much to Elena, Megan, Brett, and Anna for all of your work. Thank you again to my fellow members of the Electronic Records Day work group to put it together. And I wish you and yours a happy Electronic Records Day. May your bytes be preserved forevermore. Thank you so much. And we'll see you soon. Bye, y'all.